It's Nick D. Virgilio. How's it going, man?
Woohoo! Good, man. How are you?
I'm good. I have to firstly start this interview by saying that I, as a 12-year-old, was blown away by your performance at Modern Drummer 2003. And I was just left speechless with your performance of Made Alive Overture. I couldn't get to grips with the 16ths that you were doing on the hats and between the two snares. And in the end, I just threw the DVD in the bin and went and learnt the bass. No, I didn't really. The last bit didn't happen. But seriously, you're an unbelievably talented drummer.
You're making me blush. Thank you, man.
No, it's true. And also to sing and drum at the same time. That's got to be tough.
It is. The more you do, it's not as hard as you think.
Okay.
People sing and play guitar and piano and other instruments that are equally difficult. It's just it's amazing what the brain can do, and with a little bit of practice, I mean, it can happen for sure. And there's some drummers now that are taking this whole the rhythm concept between the voice and your body to a whole other level too. So it can definitely be done.
I mean, it's pretty fair to say that, when you think of singing and drumming, you kind of automatically think of like Phil Collins, I suppose, would be like the first person that most people would think of when they think of a singing drummer. But actually, in 1997, you were one of the two drummers that was chosen to play on the Calling All Stations album for Genesis in replacement of Phil. How was that for you?
Crazy, unbelievable. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that would ever happen. So it was an amazing experience.
And you're also looking to work with Ross Jennings of Haken, which is very exciting. Not much has been said about that. So are you able to tell me a little bit behind the scenes as to what's going on? It's all a bit mysterious at the moment.
Yeah, the first single is going to be out relatively soon, I think. It's a really cool project with me and Ross and Neil Morse. It was supposed to be sort of a mellow, more vocal kind of record. Ross is a great singer, great musician. He's got a solo record that's just about to be released, or if it already is, something like that, some really cool tunes. And so that's sort of what the record is like. It's a mellower thing, not totally mellow. There's some really cool energetic spots, but it was about getting the three voices together and doing a lot of harmonizing.
Okay.
And we're all writing. It's just writing in a little bit of a different vein. We'll be curious to see what some of the more hardcore prog fans think of it, but I think everybody will enjoy it. There's some really cool things there, and we're all writing. It has some different feels and things throughout the record, and it's pretty fun.
So this is a more calm approach to the world of progressive rock. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, but some of it's not progressive at all. Some of it's just kind of straight ahead. I wouldn't say pop music, but it's just sort of just songs, I don't want to spoil too much of it. The first song that comes out is actually pretty. I think it'll appeal to a lot of the prog fans.
Okay.
And throughout the record, you'll kind of get the flavor of everything else.
I'm really excited to hear it. When is it out?
The official release is in February.
Okay.
We're going to put out a few singles up until that point.
Nice.
Yes.
So let's. I want to kind of dive into you as a product, as a brand, as a drummer, as a musician. When was it that you kind of realized you could perhaps give up the day job and realize that drumming was actually it was paying the bills? You were going on tour. You were getting more and more known. When did that kind of start to happen for you?
Well, honestly, I've never really had a day job until coming here to Sweetwater, where I'm at now. I'm doing all the product videos and stuff. I had odd jobs and stuff, but I made money making music from like the time I was 17 years old. Started playing in my first cover band, and it was mostly that kind of stuff. Weekend warrior things, cover band gigs, just whatever I could do to play. Wasn't always a great living. And thankfully I had my wife, Tiffany was allowed, made it so I could do a lot of these things, and while the bills got paid. I knew I wanted to be a musician from really early on. So just played around in all kinds of different bands in LA and did all kinds of gigs, from weddings to bar mitzvahs to playing in bars and clubs. I mean, it's anything and everything.
And then you struck huge success with Spocks Beard, which, as I say, for me, I was kind of turned on to a fan as a very young teenager. A friend of mine lent me the album Feel Euphoria. I phoned him up, and it was after I saw you on Modern Drummer 2003. I was like, have you seen this guy, Nick DiVirgilio? He's like, he's a monster. And they said, oh yeah, let me lend you this album, man. This is the coolest album. And I listened to Feel Euphoria, and I kid you not, I think my ears had an orgasm. Never happened before elsewhere, but it was that good. I'm not even joking. So
hey, I've done my job.
Yeah,
having an eargasm means that I've done my job.
Having an eargasm in 7/8, that was a new one.
Right.
But that was an enormous musical accomplishment, because prog rock in itself is such a niche market anyway. Was it difficult to plow away at a project and finally get the success that it deserved, or was it something that happened naturally? How did this come about?
Well, the band had been around for a while, and are you talking about that record specifically, or just
just your involvement?
Yeah. I met Neil and Alan by chance at a bar in LA, and listen, in the mid 90s, prog rock was really dead. There was some jazz fusion and some different things going on in the background, but it was really, grunge music was the really popular music of that time. And nobody that, or at least in my circle, was really listening to prog or making that kind of music. And so when I met Neil and I heard the stuff that he was doing, it was like, okay, someone else sort of still likes this stuff. And put the band together for the fun of it, really. And then over a little bit of a short period of time, it grew a little bit. And then we played this thing called Prog Fest in LA, which I didn't even know there was a progressive rock festival in Los Angeles, but there happened to be one at a cool old theater. And then we met Thomas Vauber from Inside Out, the record company Inside Out in Germany. And that's sort of what is the stepping point that propelled us to really getting started. Alan, our guitar player, was the only one with a real job, so he had enough money, and he put up the money to make the first record, Delight.
Nice.
And that was just the stepping stone to getting to moving forward. We made the second record, and then got our first tour over in Europe, and it was just took off from there.
That's amazing. And Nick, as somebody who has been so integral to the world of rock music and progressive rock, have you noticed a change within the introduction of the internet? Do you think, for example, it's harder for bands to get noticed because music's always been oversaturated, but now even more so because bands they're in a race, aren't they, to get noticed? Or was it harder 20, 25 years ago when you were the local prog band in that town at that time, and that's who people came to see?
Every time had its ups and downs, no matter what. Back then, before the internet, you had to make sure you were in lots of kind of catalogs and different sort of mail order things to get some more notice that way, to reach some different people. You had to play a lot. The internet is amazing. It's like a double-edged sword. It can be amazing for just getting your stuff out there. People that you may never reach could get turned on to your music just by chance, which can be kind of cool. But you don't make as much money on the internet. You have to tour now a lot more to kind of cover the cost. Before you would play concerts as a promotional thing for you to sell your record. Now you have to, the record is a promotional thing for your concerts. It's got totally turned around. So in order to make money, you got to get out there and play. You're right. There's a ton of noise. There's a ton of bands out there playing, but if you do something that's good and you're passionate about it, you start small and, don't try to take on the whole world at one time, and you can find your way through that. I mean, I was in our studio today, and I just got turned on to a band today. See if you've heard of this band. I don't remember the name. I got to look at it.
Oh no. Okay. Go.
Really good. Like really good.
I love how enthusiastic you are about this.
They're from Australia, called
Voyage.
Coming on right now. Hold on, it's all right. It's almost there. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard.
Yes, I'm sure I've heard of that name. Are they like a psychedelic sort of act?
Yeah, so it's a little progressive. It's a little sort of old Frank Zappa-esque sort of stuff. It's a little sort of like Mahavishnu Orchestra and things.
Yes.
It's like just like a bunch of young kids from Australia.
So cool.
Freaking great.
Also,
I mean, a little bizarre, but great, So, and that's the kind of thing. So, in the old days, if someone turned me on to a band, I'd have to go to the record store, buy the record, and do all that kind of stuff, which has its own sort of romantic quality about it.
Yes.
But now today, I can go and search out the band and hear this music, and become a fan instantly. So there's, there's positives and negatives to both things.
I think as somebody who was born right in the middle of, things like the tape trading scene and, I was born in 1990. So I feel like I was born right in the middle of the introduction to the internet being, used for these purposes. And also, the world of physical releases really. And I always think about the past so romantically in that I'd get the bus into town and I'd buy the CD and unwrap, and you could you don't want to say smell the glove, like this isn't Spinal Tap, but you could smell the new CD and you'd read the lyrics on your way back. And now I feel like we kind of live in a world of instant gratification, and I think that actually imposes a higher risk to new bands in that they release one album, everybody thinks that's great, and if the new album isn't as good or commercially successful, then people roll on to the next thing. And
yeah, well, you're going to find that in these days. You have to, putting out music these days is a different animal in the fact that if you don't keep releasing stuff, at least for the internet, not for your hardcore fans, not for your real fans that follow you through thick and thin, but to keep you on the radar, like a Spotify sort of thing, if you don't put out new music like every month, people will forget about you quickly. So a lot of these bands, and even my band's Big Train is doing this a little bit now. And it's just because you sort of have to play the game if you want to kind of keep going up the ladder. It's part of the deal. But we got another record coming out in January. And so we're releasing singles one a month for the past, it'll be 6 singles in a row. So every month a new piece is coming out just to kind of keep the momentum, wetting the whistle of everybody, right? You keep them thinking about the name of the band in their brain. So there is definitely a game you sort of have to play and learn. And it's sort of the way of the world these days. If you're an up and coming band, you're not signed to a big label or some big star already.
So what I suppose then this would lead me really nicely to my next question. What would your advice be, Nick, to not necessarily an aspiring drummer or even a aspiring progressive musician, just somebody who wants to get to the next point of success for their band or their music, whatever they're doing, somebody listening right now that's really stuck at a point and doesn't know where to go?
I would say get out there and play above and beyond. I mean, writing your songs, of course, and having good recordings is very important, but getting out there in front of people and honing your craft and entertaining folks, no matter what style of music you play. It could be freaking full on death metal. It could be disco and R&B and that, whatever it is, just get out there and do it in front of an audience and build that up as best you can, because that's where the gold is. And if you can really kind of get up, do your thing on stage, entertain folks, have them pay to come see you play. I mean, that's what's going to kind of keep the whole thing growing.
Yes.
And you get your fans that way, that's what I would say. Get out and just play in front of people. That's where you hone your craft. Your band will get better. You get more comfortable on stage. You find ways to make your show better. I mean, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
You got to get out there and play in front of people.
Because a show in itself, it's like the biggest selling point of a band. And I think it kind of always has been, aside from, album releases and stuff, even when the internet wasn't around. But I totally agree with that. I think that's really solid advice. For you, Nick, you have always been somebody that has been wildly respected, not only as a member of a band, but also a drummer, because you've worked with so many names. I mean, we mentioned earlier, about the fact that you were one of two people chosen to replace Phil Collins in 1997 on a Genesis album. And while sort of joking, you were like, yeah, that's mad. How did that come about?
Well, it all stemmed from meeting one person. So it's a lot of the who you know thing, and this you've heard it before. It's all about who you know. It really is a big deal. Excuse me. I, like I said, I was early on in my career. I was just playing in cover bands, and I met totally randomly this guy named Kevin Gilbert. I don't know if you ever heard of his music, but he was dating Sheryl Crow at the time. Remember her? And he was part of her first her first record. And he was an amazing artist. He had a band called Toy Matinee, and he was a solo artist. And I was a huge fan of his because in California, where I was growing up, his record was really big and he was pretty popular. Didn't kind of reach the rest, didn't reach a lot of other places for a number of reasons. But long story short, I was doing a gig in a mountain ski resort local to Los Angeles up in the mountains, and he showed up.
Right.
And with Sheryl Crow, and we met and we talked and stuff. And I was kind of fanboying this guy because he's a young dude, but super talented. And he worked with a lot of really big name producers and other artists and stuff like that. 6 months later or so, he called me because there was this progressive rock festival in LA that Spocks Beard played after this, the year later. Because it was the 20th anniversary of The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. And he wanted to play the record at this gig. He remembered that I was a big Phil Collins head, knew all this music, and asked me if I wanted to do it. And I said, of course, yes, immediately. And I showed up, and I had the thing pretty much memorized because I knew that from when I was a kid. And from doing that, he asked me to join his band because he had a record called Thud to promote this record. And from there, that's how I got the gig. But from there, all of a sudden, I went from just kind of floundering through and around LA to meeting this guy who all of a sudden had a much more bigger circle of more powerful friends in the music business. The producer that he used on his record, Bill Bottrell, produced Michael Jackson and Madonna and just some really giant artists, along with a ton of other stuff too. So so all of a sudden I started meeting these people before not meeting any of these kinds of things. And then I met another drummer named Brian McLeod, killer drummer who played on a lot of these records. Well, Brian was one of Kevin's close friends. We became friends. He recorded for Tears for Fears and was in the band. Well, he didn't want to go on tour for the Raul and Kings of Spain tour, recommended me, and I got the gig.
Wow.
So then all of a sudden I'm in Tears for Fears. Okay, cool. And that's because I met Brian and Kevin.
So cool.
And then while I was over touring in England with Tears for Fears, Kevin reached out to me and he said, I heard Phil Collins quit the band and they might be auditioning drummers. You should go find the management office and go see if you can get an audition. I said, okay. So I went and found Hit and Run Music in London, and I brought him the very first Spocks Beard CD and invited him to the Tears for Fears show. And then they called me and asked me to send them some more stuff. And then they flew me to England for an audition. I mean, so all of this, it's all because I met Kevin. One person. Yeah. And that's sort of like just snowballed meeting other people and stuff, but it was really based upon meeting that one guy. I mean, what a story. That is an amazing story. And I hope it inspires people listening to this to, outside of their world of music, to also dip their toe in as many different social circles as possible, because those cliques, they are very important. One question that I ask lots of my guests, and I always get an interesting answer. I guess it's a two-part question. Firstly, is Spinal Tap a real, true reflection of a rock and roll lifestyle and what you have experienced? And what has been your biggest Spinal Tap moment ever? Oh gosh, let me try to remember what that is, because there was probably a few, but it definitely is in certain aspects. You bet. The Spinal Tap stuff is totally real. They obviously spoofed it in a big way, but it was a lot of that stuff is exactly what happens to bands. Everything from seeing your name on the marquee below something else, just like when it said, I told him it's supposed to say Spinal Tap Bed Puppet Show. I'll never forget I'll never forget playing with this female artist. Her name's Jonathan Brooks, singer-songwriter, American singer-songwriter over here. She's super talented. You should check out her music. She's amazing, actually.
Sure.
And I was touring with her, doing around a bunch of gigs, and we did a gig in San Diego, California.
Nice.
And we showed up to this club, and we didn't realize there was like 3 rooms in this club, but the marquee it was a single marquee, so you think it was just the main thing. Well, it says on the marquee, Pimp and Hoe Night, and then Jonathan Brooke underneath that.
No.
And she freaked. It's like, well, first off, the person who put that up there was an idiot. Why would you, come on. And then, and she freaked out because people, it just was not what she wanted to see. So that kind of stuff totally happens, right? All the way to the stuff where you play a club in some faraway place and someone doesn't speak English, and you don't know how to get paid, and there's nobody there. I mean, all kinds of stuff like that. Getting lost before shows, not finding the stage. That totally can happen in some of these big clubs. Totally. So yeah, it's real. It's
amazing.
Real. And meeting you meet some other big artists while you're touring. You
I love that bit.
You look up to them, you think they're really great, and they turn out to be sort of like just a pompous jerk. That's par for the course. So yeah, they really hit the nail on the head for a lot of those kinds of things.
Amazing. Do you know my favorite thing, my dream scenario would be to just sit with loads of people that I've interviewed and all of us just collectively watch Spinal Tap, for the reason that, I'd love to just see other people's faces, like, and see how they would react. But I'm making the assumption, Nick, that you're going to be coming over to the UK very soon with Big Big Train, and also maybe doing some bits with Ross and that project.
Yeah. So I was just in the UK about a month ago.
I know. We should have gone for beer.
So the Big Big Train UK tour is in the middle of March. Tickets are on sale, and all those shows are available to check out. So please come see us. It's going to be nice big venues, our biggest ever.
Wow.
The production's kind of taken another level up as far as lights and all this kind of stuff. So it should be a really some fun gigs. And then the Ross and Neil thing, we'd love to play. I don't know when we'll play live, but let's see how the record gets. People react to the record first. But then there's a Big Train. It's going to be a lot of Big Train next year for me, because our first ever US tour is about to be announced.
Nice.
We'll do that. And then we'll be back over in the UK in September for a couple of festivals and maybe some European shows too.
Cool.
Yeah. So that I'm looking forward to that a lot.
Amazing. Well, I'm going to definitely be there, and would definitely love to see you live.
Sure.
But thank you for stopping by on the program, and thank you for all the advice, the Spinal Tap quotes. It's been a lot of fun.
Anytime, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you.